Hi, my name is Morgan Turner, Special Olympics athlete and athlete ambassador and health education specialist for the Human Development Institute. And today I'm interviewing Dr. Phil Rumrill. Let's get started. How would you describe yourself?
I grew up in a small town in Vermont. I went to school in New Hampshire and graduate school at the University of Arkansas. I'm a rehabilitation counselor by training. My current job is as a professor of counselor education and director of research and training at the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky.
Can you describe your personal experience with disability?
Yes, it happens that I am legally blind. When I was 16, I acquired a condition called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, which is a mitochondrial DNA condition. That condition claimed most of my central visual acuity in both eyes. I had normal vision up to that point, and my vision has been compromised ever since then. So I've since the age of 16, I have been what they've classified me as legally blind. And so I was going into my last year of high school at the time that this happened, and ever since I've been a member of the disability community.
Thank you for sharing. As a child, did you have a dream job that you wanted to have in the future?
My dad was a logger and my mother was a beautician. And we grew up on a dirt road in the country in Vermont. And my first goal was to move to a place that had paved roads and cable television. But I decided early on that I didn't want to be a logger, and he didn't want me to be. It's good, honest, hard work for sure. And like I said, I enjoyed doing that with my dad, but he always wanted me to do something different than that. But my first goal until I was about 12 years old is I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. And at about 12, I realized I wasn't a particularly good player, so that wasn't going to be an option for me either.
What did you do for fun when you were younger?
Well, I love sports, played sports year round. Football, basketball, and baseball mostly. We did a lot of outdoor activities. I wasn't much of a hunter, but I liked to fish. We lived right very near the Connecticut River in New England, which is a very large river. And so we spent a lot of time doing those kinds of things. And we grew up literally in the woods. So most everything was outdoors. I've always loved to read. And would read anything I could get my hands on, particularly when I was a child.
In what ways did your school and community help you?
This was a small town. Town I grew up in had 1,100 residents. Everybody knew everybody. And my family had been there for many, many generations. And a small town community sense really helped, I think, in that regard. I had to stop playing sports for my last year of high school, but the school district was very good with me. They provided me with support so I could finish my last year of high school in a college preparatory track. They provided me with an instructional aide who went with me to all my classes and would essentially read to me, because this was right before the personal computer, Morgan. So, there were no voice programs or anything like that. My college plans changed a little bit during my last year of high school because I had to look to find a college that had good support services for students with disabilities. My family, the community, and my teachers and friends and the administration at my school was very, very helpful. At that same time, Morgan, I got connected with the State Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. In Kentucky, we call that OVR. And I had a counselor from the state of Vermont who came and started talking to me about employment opportunities and what I could do in the way of going to college. And the state vocational rehabilitation program helped me in determining what would be the best college to go to, started talking to me about my career interests and things like that. I don't know what I would have done without the support of this really excellent counselor who, in a very real way, changed my life and my family's at a time when we needed them the most.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brings us to the next question. Growing up, were things accessible for you?
Looking back, I would say they probably weren't accessible in a universal design sort of context, but because the condition was so new to me, I didn't think of it like that. I just, and I was familiar with my environment. In a small town, you don't go outside of that. So I think the environment became accessible because people were willing to accommodate with things like transportation and sharing access to written information in school. And I found the college I went to quite accessible in the way of accommodations for the classroom. And they had a well-known program for students with disabilities. So I always felt like my needs were being met. And it was during college that I got my first laptop with a voice program that would speak whatever I'd typed out. I had a closed circuit TV for magnification. So it was during college that I began to use technology to accommodate my vision loss. And that really opened the world for me in a major way. And I don't know if I'd be able to do my job today if I didn't have technology to help me. And the disability is something we have to deal with, but it's not who you are. It's a part of what you have to deal with. And I think that was helpful to me, early on is that my family didn't focus on it except for my needs around accessibility, but they didn't treat me any differently because of it.
How did family and friends support you growing up?
I guess more than anything, just by, not treating me any differently because of disability. I never felt kind of singled out, and they would include me in things as they would anybody else. And if we needed to be accommodated in one way or the other, they made those arrangements. It was understood as I got older that I wasn't able to drive. So if they had any kind of activity or whatever, I'd have to get a ride, and that's kind of just understood.
Who has been a big influence on you?
My parents, they, right from the very beginning, before and after this, they've been great. They taught me the importance of hard work and treating people well, and planning for the future and being independent and things like that. And this doesn't have anything to do with disability. This is just how you learn. Your parents are important role models, for better or worse.
Yes.
And mine were and continue to be. So I would point to them as two my most powerful, inspirations. And I've had great teachers and colleagues and friends, over the years. But I would have to start with my parents, and I would not blame them for any of the things I haven't done well, but I'd credit them for all the things I have.
What are some lessons you've learned in life?
I would tell people that it's very important to, in terms of work and career, it's important to find something you really love to do and find a way to get paid for doing it. That hard work pays off.
Mm-hmm.
That being kind and considerate and generous is a better way to be all the way around. You have more friends and good associates that way, but it also comes back to you that you end up people tend to treat you the way you treat them, and I think that's very, very very important. I think I've learned through this experience the importance of inclusion. I'm proud to be associated with so many folks who have varying needs, and to be a member of the disability community. It's been my work as well as my own personal experience. And so being able to work in a field that has been such a benefit, to me in my own life is a great honor and privilege.
Is there anything you'd like people to know about you and your disability and the impact it's had on your life?
What I would like people to know is that having this experience has really motivated me and probably prompted me to get into the kind of work that I do now. And it's really gratifying for me to see people who encounter a variety of obstacles or barriers or have a wide range of experience, to see them succeeding and to see our society moving toward full inclusion. I've just been delighted to be part of that process, and I've been so proud to get to know so many people who marshal the strength and courage and persistence that is required to adjust to disability and to lead productive and meaningful and happy lives. It's not about what you can't do, it's what you do contribute and what you add in that appreciation of diversity and value of everyone's humanity. And it's a great honor to be a part of a process that is really moving the needle in the direction of inclusion and full participation.
Yes, definitely. What things would you like to see change for people with disabilities in the future?
Well, I think one of the things we've got to do is we've got to make some impact on the rate of employment and labor force participation.
Yes.
Working age adults with significant disabilities are employed at about a 21% rate nationwide. People with disabilities are 3.5 times less likely to be employed than people without disabilities. And so we can talk about inclusion, we can talk about all the progress we've made, and we have, and we talk about positive attitudes toward people with disabilities and valuing diversity and all of that, and that's all true. But until we can remove some of the inequities in labor force participation and therefore economic self-sufficiency, the link between disability and poverty is a huge problem in our society. So we need to do better. We need to do better in making sure our workplaces are universally designed or fully accessible. We need to make sure people with disabilities have the supports they need, that they can get accommodations in the workplace that will help them to continue to acquire jobs and then to continue those jobs.
What advice would you give young people with visual impairments?
Learn new technology and stay current with that. Figure out ways to compensate for your loss of vision. Use all the vision that you have, if you have any at all, through magnification and things like that, but learn Braille, learn computers, learn to access the internet. You can stay connected in that way. Let the folks who assist people in the transition process do their thing. Let them guide you. Transition to adulthood is a very important piece of that. And if you start that process early, your success is likely to be much greater. Connect with the state vocational rehabilitation program. Learn orientation and mobility. Take care of your mental and physical health in other aspects of your life, and get hands-on work experience. Any opportunity for paid employment is good. There's inherent dignity in working. It doesn't matter what you do or what kind of work that you do. Getting started, drawing a paycheck, paying your own way, find a community and develop a range of associates, friends, loved ones who value you for who you are, not what you can't do.
What advice would you give someone who wants to be an advocate, but maybe is scared or unsure how to?
I think the disability advocacy movement is, as it should be, is very inclusive. So you don't have to be at the front of the steps at the state capitol, right, with the bullhorn. You can be in the crowd. You can be supporting that effort in a variety of ways. I also think take care of yourself. You gotta be able to figure out your own way before you can help somebody else do that, because you'll be able to help people more if your own life is moving along in the direction you want it to be. So don't be afraid to join the process, and don't feel that you have to be in a role that makes you uncomfortable. We all have a lot to contribute, and there's real strength in unity. So, and if you get involved in even a small way, sometimes that can make a really big difference in people's lives.